February 28, 2026, the United States launched Operation Epic Fury. B-2 strategic bombers crossed into Iranian airspace to strike the country's nuclear facilities. The president provided a highly specific, time-bound justification for the attack. Iran was exactly 2 weeks away from possessing a nuclear weapon. But the international monitors tasked with tracking nuclear material disagreed. Rafael Grossi, Director General of the IAEA, the UN's nuclear watchdog, stated his inspectors saw zero evidence that Iran was building a bomb. Inside the U.S. government, the friction was worse. Joe Kent, a combat veteran and the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, the agency responsible for synthesizing all terrorism-related intelligence, resigned his post. In his resignation letter, Kent stated explicitly that Iran posed no imminent threat. Then, the U.S. intelligence community's consensus assessment became public. The intelligence showed that Iran's enrichment facilities had been obliterated in previous strikes and never rebuilt. The military struck a target based on a 2-week timeline that its own intelligence directors and international monitors said did not exist. To understand how the system allowed this to happen, we have to look at the legal architecture that connects intelligence to the commander-in-chief. The critical test of that architecture happened on March 18th during a Senate Intelligence Committee hearing. The Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, submitted her official written testimony to the committee. On page 6, the text explicitly stated the intelligence community's assessment. Iran's enrichment program was obliterated. But when the cameras rolled and she delivered her testimony aloud, the director skipped that exact paragraph. When confronted by the committee about the omission, she claimed she had run out of time. This specific action triggered a maneuver buried in government policy. Intelligence Community Directive 112, or ICD-112, is the rule governing how intelligence officials brief lawmakers. It establishes a presumption of written notification. By placing the true intelligence assessment into the filed document, the director legally complied with her obligation to inform Congress. By staying silent on camera, she avoided publicly contradicting the president's 2-week justification for the war. The truth about Iran's nuclear capabilities was officially filed with the Senate. That raises an immediate question. Why didn't the legislative branch use that document to halt the military action? The administration offered a stark legal defense. They asserted that the president, and only the president, has the constitutional authority to determine what actually constitutes an imminent threat. This diagram compares a standard defense timeline to kinetic preemption. Instead of reacting to an attack that is actively underway, kinetic preemption argues the U.S. can strike a dormant capability purely because the adversary has the underlying knowledge to eventually build a weapon. Under this framework, actual timelines of when a weapon might be built do not restrict the commander-in-chief. The link between hard intelligence data and military action is legally severed. Objective facts from the intelligence community become optional advice. If the president decides a threat is imminent, the legal system treats it as imminent, regardless of what the filed intelligence says. The final constitutional safeguard designed to check executive power sits with the legislative branch. Congress holds the authority to vote on war powers resolutions to force a military withdrawal. Those resolutions failed. The votes to constrain the president missed the threshold by exactly 7 votes in the House and 6 votes in the Senate. That leaves the 60-day war powers clock. Under the law, the president has 60 days to secure congressional authorization for a conflict, a deadline that hits precisely on April 29th. But if the clock runs out and the administration ignores the deadline, there is no physical enforcement mechanism to order the bombers back to base. The intelligence assessments, the international watchdogs, and the congressional votes all exist on paper. In practice, none of those checkpoints proved capable of halting the military. While the legal architecture in Washington failed to stop the war, there is one global force that operates entirely outside of congressional loopholes. Hours after the initial strikes, Iran retaliated by closing the Strait of Hormuz. This immediately choked off one of the world's most critical global energy supply lines. The economic shockwave hit the United States within days. Gasoline prices spiked 56 cents in a single week, the fastest increase in 2 decades. The national average quickly approached $4 a gallon, translating a distant geopolitical conflict into a daily, unavoidable expense. Legal theories about executive power are abstract. Pain at the pump is a visceral financial penalty that extracts money from every American directly. Among the president's own political base following the gas spikes, a massive 79% majority now support declaring victory and ending the war quickly. Drilling down, 55% of those voters specifically cite the rising cost of fuel as their primary worry. We saw this exact dynamic during the 2003 Iraq War. As gasoline prices crossed $3 a gallon, the administration's approval ratings collapsed, directly contributing to the loss of congressional majorities. The April 29th War Powers deadline is approaching rapidly. That date sets up a collision between an executive branch operating in a legal black hole and a voting public dealing with stark economic reality. When statutory loopholes neutralize intelligence, and Congress fails to secure enough votes to intervene, the system of checks and balances breaks down. The price at the pump becomes the final functioning constraint on the commander-in-chief.
Thank you for caring enough to watch this to the end. This is Brian Hopkins, the Exhausted Moderate. If this was helpful, don't forget to subscribe. It's one click on my page. It's free. The facts are out there. They just need to be found. Until next time.